When I first came to Brown about 6 years or so ago, I started going to Petra at first to visit Artie and Martha Joukowsky, who were still working at the Great Temple at the time. And it's an amazing structure, as pictures in the building will show. And part of the excavation led to this creation of what they called the stone garden, or the lapidarium, just all bits and pieces of beautiful architectural remains that they pulled out of the temple, and then they sort of lined up over on the side. And so you could walk through, it was a lot like a garden, only the flowers were all these pieces of, you know, decorated with floral elements and pine cones and elephant heads and things like that. And then when Artie and I started talking about the building, Rhode Island Hall, and how we would renovate it, he said it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, to bring things back from Petra and have these pieces in the building. And I thought, oh, that would be superb, but that would be complicated. And Artie said, it will happen. So he said, you tell me what you would like to see back at Brown. And so we sort of wandered around, and you know, I'm like, well, that would be beautiful, and that would be great. And one piece, of course, was the block that had the wreath that's become the logo for the Institute. That was like my #1 choice. But I also asked specifically for the mill in the basement of the building, because I figured it would be good to have something that was a little practical and not just decorative. So that was kind of, that's where Artie and Martha took over. They have, because of 20 years of working in Jordan, they have many contacts, many friends, and they raised the idea of a long-term loan from the Department of Antiquities and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Took a lot of paperwork. It had to go through the General Counsel's office. It's a formal agreement that we can keep it for a certain period of time, and then the loan will be renegotiated. And then the excitement of shipping it all came, which you can imagine, the enormous amounts of, and the weight of all these things. In fact, there are still some bits and pieces in storage out in Cranston, and university storage, because literally there was one column capital. We can't fit through the door of the building, so Brown is trying to find another place to put it and get it on display. So, and so it was a kind of an amazing, large crates were, you know, created, and the pieces were put in, and then months later they appeared and were taken and put in storage in Cranston. And that's when the architects and myself and some of the grad students and Artie Joukowsky sort of went in and tried to figure out where things should go in the building, which was then being redesigned. And you sort of see the decisions we made, the little alcoves, the wreath just as you come through the door, so that the pieces are in the building, but they're not like sitting in the middle under a glass case, you know. And we thought it would be much more, just build them into the, you know, into the space in a very sort of natural, very organic, not too fussy way. Well, it's an interesting thing about the presence of Petra at Brown, and especially in the Joukowsky Institute, because it's a sort of a big keynote in what we do, but people here really work all in many different countries and all over the world, so it's not like, you know, everyone works at Petra, or everyone feels they have to. But I think what Petra stands for instead is good archaeology, committed archaeology, long-term archaeology, trying to think not just about what's good for, you know, for people's individual scholarship, or even what's good for Brown, but what's good for the site, what's good for the community. That's one reason why teaching this undergraduate seminar in Petra is so much fun, because it actually makes me, talking to the students makes me realize, you know, what, how many issues they wonder about that sometimes professional archaeologists tend to forget are important, you know, like, you know, getting little kids around the site involved and stuff like that. So I think it's a nice backdrop, Petra, but I think it's more, in some ways, it sort of stands for the kinds of archaeology we want to do at Brown more than anything else.